Tonight we are looking at three horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. A caver jams sideways a kilometer down Krubera, the second deepest cave on Earth. A flash flood strands 11 people on an island of sand inside Sof Omar, the longest river cave in Africa. And at Boesmansgat, the deepest dive site in Africa, an instructor reaches for the wrong bottle. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. True. On July 20th, 2025, Vera Kessler slid into the cold underground of Krubera Cave in Abkhazia, the second deepest cave on Earth, the black stack of shafts that held the world record for 2 decades, carrying supplies for the camp at 1,000 meters. Cavers call Krubera the Everest of caves. The comparison flatters Everest. Her job that rotation was simple: run the supply relay from Camp 700 down the meanders to Camp 1000 and come back up. Vera was 33 years old, a small-framed rigger who had logged 9 expeditions in the Arabica Massif, and small-framed was a job description down there. The team sent her first through every tight lead. Her mother mailed the same note to base camp every summer: "Come home fatter." Here is what you need to understand about the meanders of Krubera. They are canyon slots the width of a bookshelf, winding for hundreds of meters, and you travel them sideways, half floating on friction, choosing your level in the slot like a boat chooses its draft in a channel. Ride too low in a meander, and the slot tapers shut around your chest, and a jammed caver at 1,000 meters is a rescue that begins 2 days from the surface, in a country of rock where a stretcher cannot even turn around. The relay down went clean. The big shafts on rope, the traverses, the first meander taken at the level she had used all season, her pack dragged behind her on a cord like an obedient dog. She reached Camp 1000 in 11 hours, slept 8, and started back up with a lighter pack and the particular confidence of a route done 20 times. At the second meander, that is the moment the route stopped being routine. Coming up it, tired, she rode 1 hand width lower than she had ever ridden it, and the slot narrowed around her ribs like a hand closing. Her line choice had already failed her, because meanders forgive going down what they collect going up. What she didn't know, exhaling to slide free. The taper held her tighter on empty lungs. And that choice would take 9 hours to undo. She pushed, and the rock gave nothing back but her own effort. Her exhale sank her deeper. The rock had her chest. Panic arrived with the dark. Nobody answered it. Her partner's light came back around the corner 4 minutes later, and by then she had already begun the only work that matters in a squeeze: breathing slow on purpose. Because this is the physics of a jam. Panic swells the chest to full size, and a panicking caver locks herself into rock a calm one can leave. The way out of a meander is the size of your next exhale. Watch the arithmetic in the slot. 1 caver held at the ribs, 1 hand width of rock passed free, after 9 expeditions without a scratch. A rescue team 2 camps away, 6 hours of meanders and shafts from her position, and cold rock stealing 1 degree of core heat every 90 minutes through the jacket, in a place where shivering itself could wedge her tighter. And this is the part that decides everything in a squeeze. You do not fight the rock. You change your shape. Harness off, helmet passed forward, jacket unzipped and dragged out from under her, 1 clothing layer at a time, each pass buying a millimeter. Her partner worked from the wide side with a hammer and a chisel, chipping the 1 calcite knob that pinned her hip, the taps clanging down the meander like a clock with a grudge, fabric scraping rock with every millimeter won. Between taps, he fed her sugar water through rubber tubing and kept her talking about anything above ground. After 7 hours, the Camp 700 team arrived with rope, pulleys, and a doctor, their shouts echoing up the meander ahead of their lights. After 9 hours, on a count of 3, with the knob gone and her rib cage empty of air by her own order, 4 hands drew her backward out of the taper like a cork that had finally agreed. She sat in the wide spot wrapped in 2 jackets, drank the doctor's entire thermos, and looked back at the slot that had held her most of a day. Then she climbed out of Krubera under her own power over the next 2 days. Because a rescue you can walk away from is not a rescue you ride. Vera survived 9 hours in the taper with bruised ribs, and the report ruled the jam a fatigue error at a known level. The Meander had not failed her. Her line through it had. 1 hand-width low on the 21st pass. The expedition marked the level with reflective tape that season, top and bottom. Her mother's note arrived at base camp 2 weeks later, same as every summer, and this time Vera framed it. The second deepest cave on Earth is passed sideways, she tells the small framed rookies the team still sends first, and it keeps a simple ledger. The Meander measures your judgment 1 exhale at a time. 9 hours if you get it wrong, and it always measures twice on the way up. True. On October 26, 2025, Daniel Abera led 10 visitors into the cool underground of Sof Omar in Ethiopia, the longest river cave in Africa, 15 kilometers carved by the Web River, a 3-hour through trip with pillared halls that have held pilgrims and travelers for 1,000 years. The river built the cave. The river has never stopped billing it. The dry season route crosses the riverbed 4 times, on sandbanks and stepping stones, and he knew every crossing by the feel of it underfoot. Daniel was 29 years old, a guide who had led the through trip 600 times, born in the village at the cave mouth. His grandfather had taught him the cave's 1 commandment before he taught him to swim. The web forgives no schedule but its own. Here is what you need to understand about river caves in the dry season. The danger is not the water you can see. It is a flash flood born under a sky 200 kilometers away, over mountains you cannot see, already filling the river you are standing in. A storm on the Bale Highlands reaches Sof Omar in about 3 hours, and the first warning is not thunder, it is the river changing its smell. The tour ran the classic line, the chamber of columns with its stone pillars 40 meters tall, the bat galleries, lunch on the great mid-cave sandbank where the light from a distant skylight falls like a spotlight on a stage. 2 crossings in, on schedule, Daniel stood at the water's edge while the group photographed the columns and did the thing his grandfather had drilled into him. He knelt, cupped the river, and smelled it. At the 3rd crossing, that is the moment the trip turned around, because the river smelled of red earth, highland earth, and the stepping stones he had crossed an hour before now carried a finger of brown water over their backs. The schedule had already failed, because the sky had opened over mountains none of them would ever see. What he didn't know, counting his 10 back onto the big sandbank, the exits would close in 19 minutes. And that choice would be argued about at the inquiry, and then taught. Up onto the sand, instead of a run for the mouth. The web came up the way desert rivers do. It boomed once in the lower galleries. The water went brown. The crossings drowned. Panic pulled the group. He voted no. Then Daniel outvoted it for all of them, in 3 languages, with a head count and a raised hand. We stay high. We stay together. We let the river finish. Because this is the law of a flash flood underground. The river takes the floor and gives back the furniture. High sand survives. Runners do not. The mouth of a flooding river cave is a turbine, and it is always the last place to calm. Watch the ledger on the sandbank. 11 people on an island of sand 60 meters long. The water climbing 1 boot width every 40 minutes. 1 skylight of gray daylight 40 meters up, fading toward night. And a river the old accounts price at 14 hours of rage, against phones with no signal and lamps holding 12 hours of honest light. He ran the island like a village. Lamps rationed to 2, shoes off and dry. The food pooled and split 11 ways, and every hour a spoken round of names, each voice steadying 10 others. At dusk, a second surge came through and raised the river a hand-width in 10 minutes, and he moved the whole village 4 steps up the sand to an island now 20 meters of dry ground, without letting anyone see him count what was left. The river ate the island's edges all evening, hissing across the sand and gurgling through the columns, and at hour 6, the first lamp died a day early, wet at the contacts. The water stopped one stride from the huddle just before midnight, as if it had measured what it needed and taken exactly that. In the small hours, with 9 hours of lamplight left in the ration, a girl of 8 asked him whether the river knew they were there. Daniel said the river had known this sandbank longer than anyone's grandfather, and it kept guests on it, not victims. Her mother squeezed his arm so hard it bruised, and neither of them mentioned it, then or ever. The village came at dawn, the way the village had always come. Men who knew the cave barefoot, rigging a rope ferry across the dropping river at the old high-water crossing. 11 crossed the rope line one at a time, oldest first, and Daniel came last off the sandbank, 14 hours after the river changed its smell, carrying the girls' shoes so they would stay dry to the far bank. All 11 survived, and the inquiry's report ruled that the schedule had failed, but the guide had not. A turnaround 19 minutes ahead of the surge, on the evidence of a smell, and the Sandbank decision correct against every instinct that argues for the door. Sof Omar's guides now carry the rule with his name on the laminated card, in Amharic and Oromo and English. The longest river cave in Africa is alone from the web, and when the river smells of the highlands, you stop borrowing. Daniel still kneels at the second crossing on every trip, 601 and counting, 14 hours of his life banked on a sandbank, and the visitors think the kneeling is ceremony. It is a smell test, 3 seconds long. The ceremony is that he is still here to do it. True. On September 13th, 2025, Ankaru dropped into the cold green water of Boesmansgat in South Africa, the deepest freshwater dive site in Africa, a sinkhole in a sheep farm that falls away underwater for more than 270 meters. Divers cross the world for it, and the farm gate is still just a farm gate. She went in as the 60-meter support diver for a deep team, carrying her back gas and 3 deco bottles clipped along her left side, each one labeled in tape she had written herself. Anka was 36 years old, a technical instructor who had logged 600 dives and taught the gas switch drill to half the club. Bottle to hand, label to eyes, buddy confirms, then breathe. Her husband dived the same team, one rotation behind her, and every trip they checked each other's tape at the truck. A 2-minute ritual, half superstition, half law. Here is what you need to understand about decompression gases. Each bottle is medicine with a depth on the prescription. Pure oxygen at 6 meters washes nitrogen out of your blood and saves your schedule. The same oxygen at 30 meters becomes a neurotoxin, a convulsion with no warning, in a place where a convulsion means the regulator leaves your mouth. The dive ran to plan for an hour. The deep pair down the shot line into the dark, Anka holding station at 60 meters with spare gas, the green water so still she could hear her own bubbles crackle up the walls. The deep pair returned on schedule, signaled OK, and the whole team began the long staircase home, Anka sweeping up last with 140 bar and 31 minutes of stops on her plan. At the 30-meter stop, that is the moment the dive crossed its wires. Cold hands, a tired mind, and 2 bottles hanging on the same hip. The 50% mix she wanted, and the pure oxygen she would not need for another 24 meters. Her drill had already failed at the second step, because she brought the bottle to hand and skipped the label to eyes. What she didn't know, purging the regulator, the tape on this one read oxygen, and that habit would bill the whole team in seconds, the one she skipped. She breathed the wrong bottle at 30 meters, 4 breaths in 10 seconds, maybe 5. The seizure took her mid-exhale. The regulator left her mouth. Panic never got its turn. Her lamp spun once. Her husband, one stop above, saw the beam wheel across the wall and was already dropping. Because this is what oxygen toxicity does at depth. It does not warn, it does not build, and it cannot be fought with skill or courage. The only defense ever invented is the label, read twice, confirmed once. Watch the arithmetic her husband dove into. A convulsing diver at 30 meters with no regulator in her mouth. His own decompression ceiling 9 meters above his head, hardening with every second he spent below it. And the oldest triage in diving deciding for him. An airway now, a chamber later, his own blood last. He pinned her jaw, sealed his long hose into her mouth. It hissed steadily against her teeth, and held it there through the clonus with both hands, finning for the surface slope with a diver who could not help him, and a ceiling he was now burning through. The seizure passed at 18 meters. Her breathing came back at 12, ragged and real against his palm. He parked her at 6 meters on the oxygen that belonged there, signaled the surface with 3 pulls that creaked down the shot line, and stayed, shaking, doing both their schedules in his head. The surface crew ran the recall plan they had never used. Fresh bottles down the line, a diver to shadow each of them, the farm truck already driving for the chamber town of Kuruman. Anka Roo surfaced conscious, 61 minutes after the wrong breath, and asked what had happened. Then she asked again, and again, every few minutes, the way injured brains do. And the answer got harder for her husband to say each time. The chamber at Kuruman fought for her lungs and won. It could not reach the injury 4 breaths of oxygen had already written under the pressure of 30 meters. Anka Roo died 9 days later in a Kimberley hospital, with her husband reading their old dive logs aloud beside the bed, 1 trip a night, until there were no more trips.
The inquest ruled a gas switch error under cold and fatigue, and the report gave 1 page to the physics and 1 line to the human being. An instructor who taught the drill, killed by its 2nd step, skipped once in 600 dives. The verdict changed nothing about the gas and everything about the ritual. Boesmansgat's dive teams now run the switch as a 2-person ceremony at every stop, label to eyes, Buddy's eyes too, out loud. The Roo check, her husband calls it, because he still teaches it, at the same farm gate, to divers who ask about the name, and he answers the same way every time. She was better than all of us, and the check is 2 seconds long. The report adopted the name a year later, verdict and all. The deepest freshwater dive site in Africa forgives depth, cold, and darkness, 270 meters of all 3. It has never once forgiven a label unread.